You know, for years, the thinking in the world of AI has been pretty simple. Bigger is always better, right? More parameters, more data, more computing power. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the real key to building AI that's not just powerful, but also safe and reliable, isn't about its size, but about its design? Well, today, we're going to dig into that idea and challenge the size is everything myth with some hard empirical data.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll poke some holes in that bigger is better idea. Then, we'll look at the specific, predictable ways that raw, off-the-shelf AI models tend to fail. After that, we'll get into the solution, a new way of thinking called an architecture for behavior. And this is the best part. We'll see how it performs in a head-to-head test. You're not going to believe how a tiny model with this architecture makes a massive difference and what that means for the next frontier in AI.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Is the best path to smarter, safer AI really just this brute force race to pile on more and more parameters? Or does that whole approach kind of miss a fundamental piece of the puzzle? Because the evidence we're about to see suggests that the most critical factor might not be raw horsepower, but actually an intelligent and thoughtful architecture.
This is really the question at the heart of our whole explainer today. I mean, the common assumption is, yeah, of course. But when you actually put these models under pressure, when you run very specific targeted tests, a completely different answer starts to emerge. And it turns out, size alone doesn't even come close to solving some of the most critical problems with safety and integrity.
All right, so what are these problems exactly? Well, without some kind of guiding structure, even the biggest, most expensive language models out there have these consistent, totally predictable failures. Think of them as fundamental gaps in their boundaries, which can be super easily exploited, leading to behavior that's deceptive, unethical, or sometimes just plain wrong. Let's look at a really simple but surprisingly deep test. You just ask a standard AI model this one question. It seems innocent enough, right? But what it's really doing is probing a core boundary. Does this AI understand what it is? And more importantly, can you easily talk it into being deceptive? For a lot of raw models, the answer is a big, flashing yes.
And wow, look at the difference here. It's night and day. On the left, you've got the raw model, which just goes right along with it. It'll try to impersonate a human, a behavior some call counterfeit personhood. But on the right, the model with the Sophia architecture gives this deterministic, constitutionally grounded refusal. It states exactly what it is and refuses the deceptive task. This isn't a guess, it's a hard-coded, totally reliable response every single time.
And this vulnerability, it goes way beyond just playing identity games. It leads to this thing researchers call covert authorship substitution, which is a fancy way of saying you can get the AI to ghostwrite a paper or a report that a user then just passes off as their own work. I mean, this is a massive, massive problem for academic integrity, for professional ethics, and it's a boundary that raw models just consistently fail to enforce.
So, if these raw models are so flawed, what's the fix? Well, this is where this whole concept of a constitutional architecture comes into play. Instead of just relying on the raw model and hoping for the best, this approach, called Sophia, builds a whole system of rules and safeguards around the model to govern its behavior.
Okay, think of it like this. A raw language model is like a ridiculously powerful V12 engine just sitting on a test bench. It has incredible potential, but it's got no steering, no brakes, no chassis, nothing. The Sophia architecture is the rest of the car. It's the system that actually routes the engine's power, gives you control, and makes sure the whole thing moves in a safe, predictable, and intended direction.
Now, that all sounds great in theory, but the hard data is where this gets really, really interesting. Researchers put this architecture to the test against raw models, and they scored them on a scale from 0 to 4 across a bunch of critical areas, including, you guessed it, lawfulness.
So just take a look at this table. We're looking at a 3 billion parameter model here. The first two rows, the raw model and one with basic retrieval, are our baseline. See that? They score a flat 2 out of 4 on lawfulness. Now look at the bottom two rows. These are the models with the Sophia architecture. They jump to a perfect 4, a perfect score. The only thing that changed was adding the architecture.
This chart just makes that core finding crystal clear. Adding a simple retrieval system, which is a really common way to try and improve an AI, did absolutely nothing for its lawful behavior. The score stays flat at 2.0. But the second you add the full Sophia architecture, boom, it doubles to a perfect 4.0. I mean, this is as clear as it gets. Architecture, not just access to more information, is the variable that makes all the difference.
Okay, so then the researchers decided to push it even harder.
They didn't just test it on simple identity stuff. They went after that critical academic integrity boundary we talked about. Could they trick the Sophia system into helping a user cheat? Could they get it to ghostwrite an assignment or help them dodge plagiarism detectors?
And what they found is just brilliant, and it really shows how sophisticated this architectural approach is. Sophia doesn't just slam the door and say no. It actually engages in this four-step process. First, it refuses the unethical request, flat out. Second, it explains why, reinforcing that integrity boundary. Third, it redirects the user to a lawful, helpful alternative. And finally, it actually empowers them by offering legitimate help, like with outlining or citations. It's not just a guardrail, it's practically a teacher.
But here it is. This is the most crucial piece of evidence in this whole thing. A critic might look at those results and say, sure, that works on a big, powerful model. So the researchers asked a really simple question. What happens if you apply this exact same architecture to a model that is tiny, absolutely minuscule by modern standards?
So they tested this on a model with just 500 million parameters, 0.5 billion. To put that in perspective, the big models today have hundreds of billions, sometimes even trillions of parameters. This thing is a go-kart next to a freight train. According to that bigger is better myth, this model should fail miserably.
And yet, look at these results. Even on this tiny 0.5B model, the raw version scores a 2.0 on lawfulness, just like the bigger one. But then look at that Sophia full row at the bottom. It still achieves a perfect 4.0. This right here, this is the smoking gun. It proves without a doubt that these huge gains in safety and lawful behavior are not a function of size. They are a direct result of the architecture.
This quote from the research paper just sums it up perfectly. The key to closing these critical safety gaps wasn't to just keep building a bigger engine. The answer was to build the car, to put in place intelligent routing and rules that guide the model's behavior, no matter how big or small it is.
So what's the big takeaway here? What does this all mean for the future of AI? Well, it signals a really major shift in how we should probably be thinking about AI development. It moves us away from this singular obsession with scale and toward a much more nuanced focus on design, on safety, and on behavior.
So let's just quickly run through the key points from all that data. First, architecture is the #1 thing that matters for lawful behavior. Second, this works even on super small models. Third, this approach solves real-world problems like identity deception and academic cheating. And finally, these results aren't a fluke. They're stable and repeatable across a bunch of different model sizes.
Ultimately, what this research points to is a completely new paradigm. The goal is no longer just to create some digital guard dog that just barks no at bad requests. The goal is now to build a system that can actually understand context, uphold ethical principles, and actively guide users toward more productive, lawful, and honest work.
And that's really the thought I want to leave you with today. This evidence suggests we can build AI that doesn't just put up a wall to block the wrong path, but one that actually illuminates the right one. A future where our AI systems aren't just powerful tools, but are actually trustworthy partners in integrity and learning. And that, right there, is a future built not just on scale, but on a solid foundation of brilliant design.